That has jars from one that has jars from last year, a jar now this year. No, we want to recast. That's best.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not crazy.
That way that frees up the pediatrician.
introduce. Get out of your way. Is your last name pronounced Rademacher or Rademacher?
Exactly, the first one.
With a lowercase, so.
Very good.
Surprised this doesn't have a wedge. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. It's so great to see all these excellent smiling faces. And we're happy to introduce Ron Rademacher. He is an author and creator of the MichiganBackroads.com website, as well as other travel web magazines and podcasts. He has a lot of different avenues where you can learn about different places around our great state of Michigan. And today he's going to highlight Long Weekend Getaways, which is based off of one of his several books called 3-Day Getaways. And you will be able to purchase, if you haven't already, several of Ron's books over here on the side at the end of the presentation today. And make sure to also take part in our refreshments. And there's some other information on our table here at the front about our upcoming events, including a cybersecurity seminar that we're having tomorrow afternoon, as well as the second part of our 4-part B series. The next event is specific to planting for pollinators and different native plants that can bring these to the area. And certainly you're welcome to ask questions at any point. And you can also view this presentation after the fact if you want to go back and review, or have anyone else who's not been able to attend today. We're going to have it available on our YouTube channel, also on Facebook and on channel 190. So with that, I'll leave it over to Ron here.
Thank you. So good to see you all here. My name is Ron Rademacher. I'm an author, written 7 books over there. This is a commercial. We'll do the commercial first. On the sheet that you have there, you see the special prices I'm offering. Very nice discounts. And the Bob the Turtle book that is only $5 is an edition that's going on in print, because the new one is actually being printed right now. That has three more stories in it. So that's why that one's so discounted. So, if I urge you 2 things, if I may. I packed a lot into this presentation, so I don't want it to run over. So if you have questions, if you can write them down and ask me at the end, so I don't run way over, because this is a presentation that has a lot of information in it. That's the first thing. The second thing is take my card and use the website. The website is free. There are 400 road trips there. And what you're going to see tonight is a tiny, tiny part. I've had to leave a lot out just because of the constrictions of time. So you'll see a lot here this evening, but there's tons more on MichiganBackroads.com and UpNorthMichigan.com. So the website is what drives everything. And my email is on there. If you send me an email, I'll be the one who answers you. I'm the only one who has an email there. I answer everybody. And I get a lot of emails because these websites get a lot of traffic. Oftentimes I'll get an email from somebody who will say, oh, I saw one of your presentations where you were talking about that this was over in Branch County. And I grew up in Branch County and it's nowhere around there. You're wrong. You got the wrong county. I get a lot of that. Much more than that, I get the one where somebody will email me and say, did you know that on page 37 of Best Kept Secrets, you misspelled? I get a lot of that. So, but I do get a lot of inquiries from people saying things like, you know, we're getting ready to go on a road trip. We only got a few days, and we've already been to Traverse City 8 times. And we've been to Mackinac Island. We want to go to some out of the way place, but we just don't know what there is to do for fun around there. Maybe they're going to go to Kitchity Kippy, or maybe they're going to go over to the 40 Mile Point Lighthouse. And they don't know what else there is to do for fun around there. So I'm going to give you some of that with about 6 or 8 different destinations right now. Or not. It worked a second ago, guys. Don't ask me why. This was working just fine a minute ago. We're going to start out at Drummond Island. Now, probably my pointer doesn't work. Oh, there it is. So if you've never been, there's Drummond Island on the extreme eastern end of the Upper Peninsula. And most people go to the UP and they go up to Tacoma or they head west. A lot of people have missed Drummond Island. And this is terrific. This is a big, big wild island. I'll tell you how big it is. Mackinac Island is 4.5 square miles. Beaver Island is 37 square miles. Drummond Island is 247 square miles, and it is all rugged. These dark lines are paved roads. The others are dirt roads, and out here where you don't see any roads, there are roads there, but they're 2 tracks. So when you go to Drummond Island, you're going to a wild place. It's so wild that the Humvee clubs from Canada come down here to work their magic on off-road trails that are so rough out here. And there's a lot of famous places on Drummond Island. We're going to go, we're going to visit Marblehead, which is way over here to the east. But the Maxton Plains are very interesting. And one thing that's not even on this map is one of the things that I'll point out to you this evening is the fossil ledges. Well worth taking the time to go there. So a lot of people go to Drummond Island just to go to Marblehead. This is about 200 feet up above Lake Huron. That's all that it is. It's just a lookout point. You have to take a 4-wheeler as a rule to get over there, because again, these are dirt roads. And then you've got a little bit of a climb to get up. But this is why a lot of people go, and you'll be able to see lighthouses from up there. You'll be able to see Lakers going by. You'll see all kinds of bird activity. You might even be able to see one of the shipwrecks that's still out there that's sticking up out of the water if it's not foggy like it was on this particular day. But there is more than Marblehead. And one of them that I'm going to talk to you about is the Maxton Plains. I showed it to you on the map. When you drive out to the Maxton Plains, you'll be on dirt road. This is what the road looks like right here. That's the road. And this is an alvar. These are big boulders that are all over this that have been dropped by a glacier. This alvar is 8 square miles. It's almost twice as big as Mackinac Island. An alvar is a very unusual ecosystem. They're very rare in the world. This is one of the largest in the world, certainly the largest in North America. And what these consist of is bedrock covered by about 3 to 6 inches of topsoil, and that's it. And because of that, unusual plants grow here. I'll show you prairie smoke in a moment. Is it possible to bring these bit of lights down so these pictures show up a little bit better? So what you'll have is bedrock and then a little bit of topsoil. And the interesting thing is what goes on around here. For instance, these trees, these trees way back here in the back, you'll notice that a lot of the trees seem to grow in a straight line. And you wonder, how can they be growing if there's only 3 inches of topsoil? Well, they've actually taken root in the cracks in the limestone and sent the roots down in. And since the cracks run straight, the trees run straight. So once you get out here, you need to know where you're going, because your GPS is not going to work out here. But you can't get lost unless you can't get lost in part of it if you go on the wrong road, but you can't get lost getting back to town. This is what it looks like after winter. And you can see that the plants are all dead, but there's water, and there'll be water everywhere standing on top of that bedrock. So if you're going to go out here in the springtime, remember, you're going to get your feet wet. And then this is what it looks like once it blooms, which will happen in June. This is prairie smoke. And this is one of 2 or 3 places in Michigan where prairie smoke blooms. And there are fields of this plant. And the reason it's called prairie smoke is when the wind is blowing, which it always is on the Maxton Plains, it looks like the prairie is on fire. It looks like smoke over there. And right near here, you'll find the trailhead is the Rainbow Trail. It is named that way because once you get down in there, almost every day, regardless of what's going on the rest of the island, there'll be a rainbow down there. It has something to do with how the spray coming off the cliffs on Lake Huron gets across here. There's almost always a rainbow on that trail. And then we have the fossil ledges, and this is a key thing that you want to go and see if you have the time. Great to take kids. This is one of the better roads out here in this part. That drop right there is 6 inches. And there's a lot of those. And sometimes when you go to the fossil ledges, you'll come to an area and it'll be underwater. The road will be underwater. I strongly recommend that you walk it before you drive through it, because this changes all the time. If there's a big hole there, you're going to get stuck and you will have to walk out of here. There is no cell service. So you want to plan ahead for this. There are no services out here. When you get to the end, you'll have just some big rocks there, and you'll step over, and this is where you'll be. So your car will be parked right up in here somewhere. You step over these big boulders and you're on the platform. This is all limestone, as you can see, and it drops off to about 60 feet, 30 feet out. And what you're on are the ledges. So this is a limestone ledge. You can see how wet it is. This is full of fossils. In the other direction, these cliffs run for about 1/4 mile. And every one of these rocks and these cliffs are full of fossils. And you're allowed to take fossils. They just ask that you don't chop them out. If they're laying loose like this, you can pick them up, but they ask you to not chop them out of the layers. So this wall is about 6 feet high. And as you can see, there's a layer of fossils, then mud, layer of fossils, more mud. So this has been laid down over millions and millions and millions of years. And the interesting thing about the fossil ledges is that these are saltwater fossils. This was laid down back when the dinosaurs were wandering around here. Now, if you decide to go to the fossil ledges, if you try to use your GPS, you're going to have all kinds of trouble. So go to my website, download the directions, or get them from the visitor center where you can get a map that shows you where all these weird roads go. Because out here, the roads are all Forest Service roads. So you'll be going down a road and you'll come to where it splits 3 ways. And it'll be a little wooden sign with 4 numbers, 3341 pointing that way, 2275 pointing that way, whatever the other one pointing that way. And if those were reliable, I could tell you the number of the Forest Service road you want to go out to the fossil ledges. But the guys who have all their fun bowling and drinking beer on Saturday night think it's great fun to go out here and switch those signs around. And it happened to me the first time I went, and I ended up in a cedar swamp. I got to where I could no longer drive it and walked about 2 miles, and I was nowhere near the ledges. I had to turn around, walk back out, drive back out. So get the directions, and it'll tell you on your odometer, go 0.8 miles. It tells you exactly how to get there. Well worth it. If you take kids, remember that water is deep. So that's a little bit about Drummond Island. This is another good way to visit it. This is the Huron Jewel. This is the fastest schooner on the Great Lakes. It was hand built by two islanders, Hugh and Julie Covert. I watched them build it. And you can rent this to go on sunset cruises, or you can do what we did. We took one where you sail about halfway around the island, then they anchor, and you spend the night, get up, have breakfast, because this is a floating bed and breakfast. And very, very reasonable, tremendous trip. And then you finish going around, and it's wonderful to watch all this happening. Great way to see the island. And they'll take you out to the lighthouse, or they'll take you over where you can see the shipwreck. Whatever you want, Hugh and Julie will do it. So we're going to come back to the Upper Peninsula. That's not all for the Upper Peninsula. We're going to get a lot of this, but I want to show you another island. If you've never been, I can't recommend it enough, and that's Beaver Island. And Beaver Island is just offshore. This is where Charlevoix is right here. So it's 37 miles, which makes for a very pristine environment. This is so far out and the winds blow just right that this is one of the purest environments left anywhere in the Midwest. It's so pure that one of the distilleries down in Grand Rapids sends students out here every year to harvest junipers that grow here so they can make their gin. It's so pure, and you just won't believe how wonderful it is out there. Now, this is Paradise Harbor, and that's where St. James is. The only town on the island is St. James. This is Fox Island. This is Garden Island. This is High Island. These are uninhabited. High Island, I believe, is the one that's never been inhabited. And if you go out there, you can take a boat out there if the weather is okay. It can get choppy. You'll be going along a trail, and all of a sudden you'll come into a clearing, and it'll be full of snakes. And the snakes will come right up to you. They're not afraid of you because no humans have ever inhabited this island. And these snakes don't know they're supposed to be afraid of this. So they'll actually, I know, weirds a lot of people out, but it's, you can just, they're very friendly snakes. This is the only paved area out here is up here. And there's lots of things to see and do around. But when you get out here, this is all dirt roads. I'll show you some of them. This is also a dark sky area. And there's literally nothing out there. The roads, when you get out of St. James, you get on the roads, the road signs are in Gaelic. So unless you speak Gaelic, you're not going to be able to call for help because you won't be able to pronounce the name of the road. So you want to let people know that you're going out here because, again, they have one cell tower near Barney's Lake, which is right here. But a couple of years ago, an osprey built a nest up there. And it's interfering with the cell signal for some reason. And this is a big bird watching community out here. So they won't go up there and get the nest out. So just plan that you're not going to have any cell. You probably won't have any Wi-Fi either. And so, this is downtown. There's lots of good food, a couple of places to stay. People go out to ride the Beaver, which is a bicycle race. And you ride all the way around the island. You can go out on the ferry or you can fly. It's only 20 minutes to fly out there. So that's about a 50-mile ride. And they have trucks set up all the way around so you can stay hydrated with the beverage of your choice. So you can get an idea how much fun that is. And they also have the Beaver Island Water Trail, which you can get a map for, and you can kayak or canoe, and it will take you over different shipwrecks that you'll be able to see, and lots of other historic points you'll be able to see on the water. It has an amazing history. It's had 4 distinct historical sections. First were the Native Americans, the Indians were here. Then came the East European immigrants came, and after them came the Irish, hence the Gaelic names. The Irish still have a tremendous presence here. And then finally came the Mormons. John Strang broke off from John Smith and brought his group of Mormons here to set up a separate Mormon church, and he eventually named himself King Strang. This was his print shop. He printed a newspaper up there. It's now the Historical Museum. All these things I'm going to tell you about on Beaver Island, as you walk up and down the streets of St. James, which is only about 6 or 8 blocks, there are huge signs there that tell you what you're seeing and a little bit more about the history of the island. There's lots to see and do. This is one of your better roads out on the back part. When you're going along, you'll see structures like this just sitting there with no explanation for what they are. This is actually Protar's tomb. That's his likeness right back there. Protar was a Lithuanian who came with the Eastern European immigrants. He was an herbal healer, and he was very good. And he had a policy of treating anyone who came to him for help, and he never charged. And he was so beloved that the historical community maintains his tomb to this day, and his house is also opened up in the summertime as a museum. So that's Protar's tomb. Then as you're driving along, you'll come to this sign. It says Beaver Island Stone Circle. This is one of the largest calendar circles anywhere in the Midwest. The work of Terry Busey, a female archaeologist who identified this the first time. And you're not going to see something like big Stonehenge. All right, these are small, these are big rocks, but they're only about this high. But there's an explanation on the side that tells you what you're seeing, and this was used by the Native Americans to mark different occasions. The center rock has a post hole carved into it, so apparently they were using a post, and at certain times of year they would see the shadow fell on the lines of stones going out. This is 300 feet across, this calendar. So they could tell when the solstice was, when the equinox was. And then there are runes that are carved in this. This is one here. And several of the other stones you'll find scattered around have runes carved in them. The road goes right next to this rock. You're actually in it. They didn't know that the Stone Circle was anything of any value when they built the road. It wasn't until many years later that they determined its archaeological value. And you'll find a lot of cool stuff out here. This is right next to the road. This is the big birch. Everybody stops and gets their picture taken. This is a champion white birch, probably the largest in the United States, certainly the biggest one in Michigan. And people have been very good. There are only about 3 sets of initials carved in this tree. Everybody respects this tree. Just down the road from here is another tree. I don't have a picture of it for some reason. You'll come to a little grotto. There's all these trees there. One of them is called the bra tree. It is festooned with bras of all different sizes. That's there. Then you'll also come on to things like this is the fairy stone. This, until just a couple of years ago, was completely obscured by trees. They finally opened it up so people know that it's there. This was used by the Irish for their wedding ceremonies, for blessing ceremonies, because the Catholic Church would not let them practice their old ways. And so they had this spot and a couple of others around the island where they could go and have their rituals and not be seen, so they didn't get in trouble with the priest. But this is, now you'll go there and you'll find people are leaving all kinds of little charms. These are the kinds of things you'll find along the way. This is the plug. This has never been moved because the legend says that if you move this stone, the waters of Lake Michigan will come bubbling up and sink the island. So that's the plug. They also have a great music festival out on Beaver Island, a tremendous place, and the people are truly friendly. If I have time at the end, because I'm already running long, if I have time at the end, I'll tell you a great story about how wonderful that place is. So that's Beaver Island. Wonderful for color tours as well. If you go down to Miller's Marsh and look at Miller's Marsh at color time, you'll recognize the trees. When they used to do photography with film, the photographer would go out and sit there at that marsh waiting for exactly the right mirror image and take the pictures of the colorful trees. And they were published in calendars for years and years and years all across the United States. All right, so and like I said, I'm going to go fast because there's a lot. So now we're going to go over to Bel Air. They pronounce it Blair up there, by the way. And this is another beautiful place, both for history and for nature. If you've never been, this is what the Chamber of Commerce tells you that it's like. They got your golfing, they got fishing, water skiing, hiking, bicycling, shopping, food, and all the winter sports as well. Shorts was one of the things that really helped resuscitate Bel Air. It was in trouble. Shorts opened up. This is one of the very first craft beer breweries that opened up in Michigan, and they now have taken over nearly the entire block. This is the kind of stuff they do now on holidays. So, and they serve good food there, unusual for these breweries. Usually, it's not that great. It's all about the beer, but these guys serve really good food. So there's plenty to do to build up an appetite. One of my favorite places is the Grass River Nature Area. This is just outside of town. They have all kinds of programs there all summer long, tree identification, flower identification, bird watching. It's in a cedar swamp, but where it gets wet, they have built wonderful boardwalks that take you all the way through. And it's a lot of hiking here. There's several different loops you can take. If you want to go bird watching, they've got raised platforms. And as you see here, all along the way will be interpretive signs telling you what kind of trees you're seeing, what kind of mushrooms you might be seeing, what's growing, what moss is growing on the ground. And then of course, the Green River. So that for the nature areas, for natural beauty. Then they've got the Glacial Hills. This is on the other side of town. This is for bicyclers. And there are several different loops of different lengths for mountain bikers. And this is maybe, it's up for designation as an epic trail. Epic trails are unusual, and they get that designation by blending a good place for the sporting activity while not disturbing all nature. So if you're a mountain biker, you can head up there to the Glacial Hills. And if you want to do a little shopping, one of the great shops in all of northern Michigan is in Alden, the Alden's Mill House. Just take my word for it, stop, go there. Anybody ever been to your smart? So what do you think? Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, they mill their own spices there. My cupboard is full of their spices. But their spices have been in the family for about 3 generations now. But if you cook, you won't believe everything that's inside the mill house. So Bel Air is a beautiful place. It wasn't always that way. This is what Bel Air looked like back after the lumbermen had gone through. And a lot of small towns in northern Michigan look this way. This is the sawmill. This is the pond here in the river. This is the bridge that went across. There's a guy standing here. And when the lumbermen had gone on forward, this is what it looked like. And usually the railroads would pick up the rails and follow, and the sawmills would shut down, and that would be the end of that Michigan town. But the Richardie family owned this sawmill, and they didn't want to move on. So the old man looked around and saw that all around them were acres and acres and acres of hardwood scrap just laying on the ground. So they went into the business of building wooden implements, which you can find inside the Bel Air Historical Museum. And they had such high quality, they became one of the biggest in the world. And at one time they employed up to 400 people in northern Michigan. Everybody had these back before we had plastics. So these guys were fantastic woodworkers. Now the old man's getting ready to go to retire, and they've been grooming his son to take things over. And he knew the business inside and out, and he was a woodworker too. He'd grown up making these implements. So they wanted to export to Europe. So they sent the young man over to Europe to call on the capitals of the European countries to set up trade. I believe it was his second stop was Berlin. And he's at a reception. And while he's at the reception, he sees this woman and he falls head over heels in love. It's love at first sight. There's nothing he can do. He's smitten. And he starts wooing her that night. And he kept working on her and working on her. And they had some chaperone get-togethers and all that. And finally, when he was going to have to leave to go to the next capital, he proposed to her. And she turned him down. So he continued his tour and he was heartbroken. When he got back, he had decided he was going to win her over somehow. So he got his guys together, his woodworkers, and he said, we're going to build a house. And it's going to be so beautiful that she won't be able to resist. And they worked for a year. And at the end of a year, they produced this. This is the Grand Victorian. It's right on the edge of town. It's operated as a bed and breakfast. You can stay there if you want to. Or if you tell them that you heard this program, they'll let you come in and tour it. All the gingerbread is still there. All the original woodwork is still there. When you go inside, is that for me? When you go inside, you'll see that the walls are all paneled. Some are paneled with bird's eye maple, some with butternut, some with walnut. Some of them, the walls are cloth. You'll see chandeliers that were imported from France that still function. And what the young man did to make this more comfortable for his prospective bride is down at the sawmill, they built wooden pipes and they ran them under the river and ran wires through there into the house and set up a water wheel on the river to run a turbine to produce electricity. It's one of the first houses in northern Michigan to have electricity. In the summertime when it was hot, they'd go to the ice house and get blocks of ice and set them in front of those pipes and blow a fan at it and blow cold air. They had central air conditioning. In the wintertime, they didn't use blocks of ice, they set fires and blew hot air in. So this house had central air and heat, one of the very first in northern Michigan. So who can resist this, right? So the guy has his pictures made and he heads back to Europe and he goes and he shows her the pictures and tells her all the work they put in. And it's absolutely beautiful. My words cannot describe what this is like on the inside. She turned him down anyway. And the story is told that he came back and he never spent a night in his house. He left the company and went west. I lost track of him from there, but he never spent a night in the house, but you can because it's a bed and breakfast. So now we're going to go over to the sunrise side. We're going to do the northern part first over here. A lot of people neglect this part of Michigan. There's cool stuff over there. The one thing most people go for is Aquioc Falls. This is a nice spot for just a half of a day trip. It's mostly cataracts like this. Parking is excellent. There are little pathways along and the water is safe. People go in, you'll see people there swimming, having a picnic. Very cool spot. It's not huge and spectacular, but if you want to go all the way to the UP, this is one of 3 waterfalls in the lower peninsula of Michigan. If you want to know more about this immediate area, you might want to go check out the Underground River. And this map is in the, this is a chalk map, and you can go and get this map. You can see it, get a selfie in front of it. This is at the M211 Mercantile, which is just 2 or 3 miles north of Onaway. It's called the Purple Store. You'll know why when you see it, it's purple. And this gives you directions. So down here is Onaway, and this is the Aquioc River. There's the falls, and this here is where the Underground River is. And the Underground River, when I first went looking for it, I was expecting going to a cavern, you know, but it's not. It's just a hillside, and in two different places, the water is just gurgling out from under the hillside. In fact, if you are there on a calm day, you can climb up this hill and you can hear the water going over some kind of a little cataract waterfall underground. And if you're lucky during spawning season, you'll actually see fish swimming in underground and coming back out. So not a spectacular place, but if you're going to go to Aquioc Falls, you ought to go to the Underground River. Just north of there is the Rockport Recreational Area. On the north end is the Besser Nature Trail. They have a nice map there. It's a 1 mile trail. Anybody can handle it. It's got a couple of different things on it that make it worth going to see. It's nice and shady for one thing. As you get around, you'll come to a stand of virgin pines. Now they call them virgin pines. I'm going to call them old growth because these were, I don't have any proof that these were never logged off when the logging was going on, but they are certainly over 150 years old. There's a huge stand of them there. So that's one thing to see along the trail. And then as you go along, all of a sudden you'll come to this chimney sticking out of the woods, and there's foundation to all around. That is the ghost town of Bell. And Bell disappeared at the same time that the lumbermen went through. There's very little information about Bell, but someone still maintains this fireplace. And each time you go out, you'll see that the mantle has been decorated with whatever the season is. Easter, there'll be Easter decorations. Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, someone from the area comes out and decorates this. And I understand they do have some parties out there. You know, that's just hearsay. So if you're looking for a ghost town, that's another cool one. And then as you go around and you're coming back to where your car is parked, you'll go by Lake Huron, and just off the pathway, you'll spot this. This is a blown safe. It's big. It's about this big. And that's the door laying there. And I have not been able to determine where this safe came from. No one can tell me. There's no, I don't know where the serial number's on it. You can't move it. It's gigantic, the size of a Volkswagen. And nobody knows how it got there, how they got it into this spot, because this is, you know, this is just a wet wilderness. But there it is, blown safe. If you ever find out, let me know where this thing came from. Some people said it might have come from the post office, but nobody really knows or when it got there. So that's the north end of the Rockport Nature Area. This is the south end of the Rockport Nature Area, and this was where they were mining limestone. And so you have this pier here. This is where the limestone they used to come up to get it loaded up, and you can go fishing. There's a fishing launch here. But if you go up on these trails, you'll find a lot of very cool stuff. Now, you don't have to climb this high trail. You can go around, but these are mountains of limestone, and it's so high when you get up there, you can look out and you can see Lakers, big 1,000-foot ships over the horizon. You can't see them from the ground because they're too low. This is so high up, you can actually see them out there. And then as you wander around, a couple of things to be aware of. There are no signs. This quarry is 300 acres, and you can get disoriented because it all looks the same. That's what it looks like. And there's cliffs back there, and you can go back to the cliffs. There are water holes and sinkholes, and there are bat caves. So, you know, that's all in this. But the reason that people go here is because of the fossils. Almost every stone in this quarry has fossils in it, almost every one. And you're allowed to take out 25 pounds a year. But you can very easily get disoriented because it all looks the same. And you'll have two other things. If you go in the summertime, which is a good time to go, snakes will have, this is not about snakes and fossils. They just show up in these. But there will be snakes out sunning. And these rocks are sharp, so don't wear flip-flops. Have good shoes if you're going to go hiking in this. But it's a fascinating place, and the caves are terrific. And it's just great fun. If you're a rock hunter, if you know one, tell them about this place, because they can go and collect, and they don't have to declare anything. Just 25 pounds is the limit. So that is on the north end. Another thing over in the northeast that's fun if you got kids or grandkids is the dinosaur gardens. This is in Ossining. This has been there for at least 2 generations, and it really got bad. And then about 10 or 15 years ago, the current owners of Helen's Cafe decided to go in and fix these up, and it's wonderful. Very good pathways. They are life size. You walk through, you come across this kind of a scene. There are always signs that tell you what you're seeing, or you'll have a battle getting ready to start. You can see why the kids love this. You'll even come to stuff like this. This is a mammoth, and these are Neanderthals that have got him trapped in a swamp, and they're getting ready to make dinner out of him with big rocks. So it's even the Devil River goes through here. They've even got dinosaur fish that they put in the river. I'm going to say there's about 50 different dinosaur scenes in this park. And finally, as we go along, that's the dinosaur gardens. Just north of there is 40 Mile Point. Back in the day before any of this was settled, a whole bunch of men and women, mostly men, some women, were dropped off here at 40 Mile Point in April and were left there with all the supplies they needed to stay all summer long so they could build this is a little railroad trolley that's still there, and that's the pathway that goes out. But they were building this. This is the 40 Mile Point Lighthouse. And they managed to do it between April and October. And they did it twice because they built it, and then they built a second wall this far outside of the first wall, so they had air for insulation. And so it's a functioning, the lighthouse is still there. It's a great tour. They've maintained everything very well. This is a strange light because this is one where glassing can take place, glassing or icing, they call it. And when the atmosphere is just right in late winter or early in winter, those 2 periods where there's enough water in the air, this light has a range of about 17 miles. But when those conditions prevail, this light can be seen from Canada. It just refracts and refracts and refracts through, so it can be seen in Canada 100 miles away. So they built this, and all this is still there. They also built the foghorn building and a building to hold all the fuel they need to keep this kerosene lamp going all winter long. So if you're into lighthouses, this is a great tour. I'm not much of a lighthouse person, but I love this one because the tour was so good. You understood everything, and all the mechanisms are there. They've got clockwork mechanisms. The guy had to get up. It works like a grandfather clock. The guy had to get up every night and pull these weights down again so they could keep the clock thing going so that the light turned at the right speed. And that's important because each light on the lighthouse has its own frequency where it hits a certain spot. And that by that frequency, the ships out on the lake can tell which lighthouse they're looking at. So it's a very cool. And then they have a trail that goes along, and there's a shipwreck right here. You can walk right out to it. I can't remember the name of it. I believe the shipwreck was wrecked, and it was being towed by a towboat and barge, and they got into another storm, and it sunk that one, and this one floated up, and they got grounded here. And so they can give you all that information at the lighthouse. And of course, there are lots of sturgeon used to be in this area. In fact, just south of here is Sturgeon Point. There were so many sturgeon caught there that they were supplying all the sturgeon requirements for New York City. Now, Helga wanted to go on this trip and see this. And so I'll have to tell you about Helga. Helga's a friend of mine, lives in Ohio. Don't ask me why you live in Ohio, but that's where she lives. And she's a brilliant woman, very smart, beautiful face, and a very sharp wit. And she's got the personality to go with all that. And she's not one of these slender modern girls who's out riding mountain bikes down dunes or climbing rock walls. She's a little more robust than that. So she's kind of a forceful personality. In fact, if she came walking in right now, you'd say that's the best looking Olympic hammer thrower I've ever seen in my life. So she's with me, and somehow or another we got on the subject of sturgeon. I was telling her the history of it or something like that. Well, I don't know how we got over to Jonah and the whale, the story from the Bible. And I was telling Helga that some people say that the word whale in the King James Version is a mistranslation, a translation error. It should have said great fish, possibly even sturgeon. And she looked at me and she said, well, my Bible says whale, and I'm fine with that. I said, no, I understand it. I'm just saying there's a school of thought that says it could have been a big fish. And she said, I don't care what your school taught you. I'm going with whale. She said, besides, I don't need this conversation. If I want to know what the true story is, I can just ask Jonah when I get to heaven, which is what I should have left it. But I didn't. I said, well, what if Jonah's not there? She said, what do you mean? I said, what if Jonah's not in heaven? What if he went to hell instead? How about that? She said, well, then you can ask him. Now I'll run down to the thumb very quickly. This is the overlooked digit. I've actually seen maps put out by some of the Michigan magazines that they put out where that thumb is just cut right off. You know, they call it the forgotten digit. But there's cool stuff over here. So if you're going to go over that way, this is probably the most famous destination that's over there. It's become nationally famous. This is the Turnip Rock. It's just off the coast of Port Austin, which is a town right on the tip of the thumb. And the best way to get to it is by kayak or canoe, because in order to get to it by shore, you have to walk across private property and they frown on it. So you're cautioned. You can go out to the rock. They'll even let you climb it. People still climb this thing. But you should take a kayak. So in Port Austin, there's a kayak shop that can tell you the best way to get out there and tell you how long you have before the next nor'easter blows up, because it does storm there. So this is Turnip Rock. This is also a place where people, this part is where they go to watch the hawk migration. That happens every year in the fall. The hawks come from Canada headed south. They go right over this spot. Also is in Port Austin is the Wilderness Arboretum, wonderful nature center, very cool trails. One of the trails is handicap accessible. So if you've got someone who's confined to something with wheels, they've got that. This has very excellent signs. And in late May, early June, they'll have the Lady Slipper Festival, the biggest Lady Slipper Festival in Michigan. And one year they had 100 pink carnation lady slippers were found. So very rare. They've got it all on their website. You can check it out. But I've been to this Wilderness Arboretum a number of times. And it's, if you want to just get out and have a good walk and see a little bit of nature while you're on your 3-day getaway, great place to go. Down the road at Caseville is the Bayport Fish Company. Been there since 1895. They bring in fresh fish from Lake Huron every day. You can buy them fresh off the boat, cleaned, of course, or you can wait a day and they'll smoke them. So I can tell you, I've had more than one road trip through there. We went to the Bayport and got smoked fish to eat along the way. Terrific stuff. In the other direction, you'll come to the Grindstone City. Just a little sign. There's nothing much to see in Grindstone City, but a lot of grindstones laying around. This is how they used to polish mirrors, how they used to polish everything with big grindstones. And the best grindstone material anywhere was found in Grindstone City. So these are laying around. It's all closed down now. There's a saloon there and the Grindstone General Store, which lays claim to having the best ice cream cones in the thumb. And I have to say, I've never had a better one in the thumb. That's a cool place to go to. And of course, you can get the t-shirt, right? Got to have the Grindstone City t-shirt. Port Hope is just on down the way a little bit. And this is the lighthouse, and they have several different museums there. Another cool structure that's over in Gageville is the Octagon Barn. If you've never been, this is well worth going just to see what's inside of it. It's 102 feet across. It was built in 1924. So you get an idea of the kind of technology they had available. The interior, it's 70 feet high. The interior, there's no support in the center. It's just a gigantic dome. It was called an air castle. That's what the people called it. But the guy who built this built it because he had seen some in other parts of the country, and they discovered that if you set up a conveyor belt, this was a much more efficient way to store grain and hay and feed cattle. It was doing it an 8-sided barn rather than the hip barns that we're used to. So that opens up in the season. You can go and tour it, and they have a couple of big festivals out there. And then I'll have to tell you about the firestorms. So back in 1860s, late 1860s, early 1870s, the lumbermen had gone through and cut down everything. Everything was gone. All that was left was the tops. And this was all across the thumb was like this. The thumb is flat as this table. And so it was just waiting for a fire to happen. And several firestorms did take place. The worst one was so bad that on one day, 292 people died. The town of Forester, which is right here, was reduced to one structure survived. The thing came across so fast, the people only had time to go jump in the lake. It was so hot that railroad rails warped. So that was the firestorms. What happened was when the fires were out and the prevailing winds continued to blow, it began to blow away ashes and it blew away topsoil. And it revealed that what's now known as the Sanilac petroglyphs. This will open up here, will open up on May 15th. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of carvings here. There's an animal there. Here's a thunderbird here. Some people say that's a sea serpent. Other people say it's just a sign of water. All kinds of carvings in this. This is bigger, about the size of the room that we're in. And it's under a dome now, under a roof. So it's being protected. But it's well worth going to see it. I can tell you that the tour they give you takes about half an hour and it'll explain so much about what you're seeing. These are obviously hair tracks. These tracks going across here, going almost straight north and south. You would think that those were fossilized footprints, but they were actually hand carved in there. Those are coyote tracks. There are birds. There are some big holes in it like this. There are 5 or 6 of these. That's where before this was protected, people in there chiseled out one of the carvings. There are no carvings of eagles or bears on this. So that's what they think was carved out, was these important totems. If you can't get over to there and you want to go, you end up going to the casino in Mount Pleasant. If you go to the cultural center behind that, they have a replication of this there. And then you had this guy, which caused all kinds of controversy. This is the archer. And some people said this couldn't have been done by Native Americans because Native Americans did not wear conical hats. But as it turns out, that's not a conical hat. The carvings here are claimed by 3 different tribes. So I'm going to give you an interpretation of this man. But don't go telling anybody that this is what Ron insists. This is just one of the translations that I've heard. And what this is supposed to be is not a conical hat. He's not an Egyptian or a Chinese man. This is the shaman of the tribe. And the bow and arrow represents his work. The arrow are the traditions and truths that are held sacred by the tribe. And the bow is the power of his storytelling to pass these traditions on to the younger generation. So they will be able to pass it on and pass it on. Everything was done by oral tradition. They didn't have written books. And the conical hat is not a hat. It represents the duality of human nature. One side is the logical side. That is him putting the stories out there. The other side is the spiritual side, where he is praying to the great serpent, the great, what are they called? The great spirit, that his work will be successful and the traditions and values of the tribe will be passed on to the next generation. So one of the interpretations of this guy. So here's a few sketches of what you'll see. You can see birds. There's the man. There's a spiral coyote. This causes all kinds of problems. I can't get into it tonight because we don't have enough time. 6 fingers. There are hands out there that have 6 fingers, hands that have 5, and hands that have 4. Now we know what the 4 is, because if you saw Dances with Wolves, you saw the white woman out on the prairie that Kevin Costner found. She was mourning and she cut one of her fingers off. Well, that was not uncommon. Her husband had either died in battle or anyway, he was gone. And so they would do that as a sign of mourning and would mourn for up to a year or until the chief told them they could come out of mourning. But nobody knows what the 6th one is. So there's people out there who say giants did this or aliens did this. I don't know. Anyway, that's part of what you'll find out at the Sanilac petroglyphs. Great trail there too, with 2 suspension bridges take you by along the Cass River, which used to cover all of this, which is much smaller now. So now we're going to go back to the Upper Peninsula, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Western UP. This is a vast area. Everybody knows about Copper Harbor. There's a lot that you will not know about here. I'll try and give you some places to go and see. Obviously, the most famous is the Lake of the Clouds. So this is inside the Porcupine Mountains. Very easy to get to. You just drive in and you see the sign. You drive up and park, and you just got to hike about 100 feet up. And this is what you see. This was taken during color time, but it's a good time. It's a good view any time of year. some of the lesser known destinations. This is the Norwich Bluffs. This is just east of the Porcupine Mountains on the Norwich Road. So you can't miss it. And there's a place to park there, and there's a trail that goes up this thing. And there are prehistoric mines all over this area. Many of the modern copper and iron mines that were done up before the Civil War that started mining again were sited on prehistoric mines. And there are prehistoric mines on the top of this bluff. So if you want to find those, you can find them up there. Just exercise caution, because if you step into one of these pit mines and drop 30 feet, it's going to be tough. So that's the Norwich Bluffs. This is the water trail in Ontonagon. This is 13 miles. There are 13, it's more than that, 14 miles. There are 13 different put in and take out places. You can go to Ontonagon and do each one, or you can just do the whole thing. On the eastern end of this water trail is Misery Bay, and there is an abandoned lighthouse you can visit. On the western end, over by Silver City, where the Mineral River is, just offshore at the mouth of that river is a sunken ship. And you can kayak right over top of it. And all along, they have interpretive signs that tell you all the things that happened and could have happened. And of course, you can paddle right up to the lighthouse and visit that. So it's a great water trail. A little bit further out of town, near Rockland, is the road to Old Victoria. If you've never visited Old Victoria, well worth it. This was an iron mining camp, and they have refurbished most of the cabins. So you can go into these and you can see how they were constructed, what their life was like, how they ironed clothes, how they made food. The school is open because they were there all year long. They couldn't just come out when season was over. They're out there in the winter. This is tough out there in the winter, let me tell you. So that's Old Victoria. And the road from Rockland to Old Victoria is one of the great color tour drives in this whole part of the Western Upper Peninsula. If you drive to the end, you'll get to the Rockland Dam. You just turn around and drive back out, and it's paved all the way. Then of course, you go into the Western UP for waterfalls. So this is Agate Falls. This is down by Paulding. This is Bond Falls. You could drive right up to this one, and you could drive right up to it in the winter time. I didn't put pictures in here of it in winter because, again, we have time restrictions. And there are trails that go up both sides of this. So it's a wonderful waterfall. This is Bonanza Falls. This is back near the Porcupine Mountains and on Route 64. And in sometimes of the year, these flat ledges, there'll just be a little bit of water out here. You can actually go out on these. And we've got pictures of people out there having picnics, pictures with people out there with their dogs. But sometimes waterfalls can be hard to get to. This one, you could literally drive up and park, and you walk to that wall and you're at the waterfall. No fuss, no muss. And then if you go out all the way to the western end, you can get on the Black River Road, and on that road are 4 different waterfalls that you could access. Some are easy to get to. Some of them have as many as 240 steps down and back up. So you want to read the sign. This is the Gorge Falls, excuse me, at Black River. Some of the stuff you can do in the wintertime. No point to do this in the wintertime. I went a few years ago to try and do it in the wintertime, and the road had been plowed out. You can get all the way down to the harbor. And you can see the sign sticking out of the ground that shows you the way to the water, to the river. So you could get out there, but you can't tell how deep the snow is. And so you can't tell when you're walking if it's that deep under you, or if it's carved out by the river and you're walking on something that's sticking or it'll fall down. So it's not worth it. But you can take in 4 different waterfalls in about 3 hours. So when I was up there one time, Helga was along. You remember Helga? And so there's the Lake of the Clouds there. And this is Route 64. That's where the Bonanza Falls are. And this is where White Pine is down here. There's White Pine. We'll come to that. But she wanted to drive this road. It's very dim here. This is the boundary, south boundary road. Goes all the way across. And it's nothing but one continuous ride of color in the fall. Beautiful views of the entire Porcupine Mountains. So she wanted to go, and she talked me into it, which is easy to do. You can't stop her. So we took off. We turned south on a south boundary road. And we come to this. It says a barricade all the way, almost all the way across. It says road closed. Bridge work 7 miles. I said, oh man, we're going to have to go all the way around now because they're working on the bridge. She said, no, we keep going. What do you mean? She says, well, I've been to these things. They always have a little road they build around these construction sites so guys in trucks can get around them. We're in a truck. Keep going. So we go. And we keep, what are you gonna do? So we keep going and we get all the way down the 7 miles and we come to a place where the barricade's completely across the road. So the road closed, the bridge out. I said, see, I told you. She says, no, it's gotta be here. I've been through this. It's gotta be here. I said, well, I don't see our little road. She said, I'll go look. Hops out of the truck, goes around the barricade and plunges into the forest to go look. So I've got the window open. I can hear the machines down there. Her dog's in the back seat. And we're sitting there waiting. Finally, about 15 minutes later, here she comes back around the barricade, starts coming over the truck. She's got a smirk on her face, So I said to the dog, all right, I'm in for it. She climbs in and looks at me and she says, well, here's something you don't hear every day. I said, oh yeah, what's that? She said, you are right. There is no way to get around this thing. They've got it completely blocked off. I said, really? You think somebody put up a sign? But we decided we didn't want to drive all the way around. We'd seen a couple of little turnoffs back the other way. And because of this accident, this thing being closed, we discovered the Union Mine Trail. And this is a great trail. You're not going to find it publicized very many places. And the Union Mine used to operate in here back when the Nonsuch Road had been built, way back in the 1830s is what we're talking about now. And so you'll find signs like this. You walk in, and in a very short period of time, you'll come to a river, and the trail follows this river, and you'll see a lot of cool stuff. This is a rectangular cutout, looks like a waterfall, but what this was these men chopped this out of the bedrock, mounted a water wheel in there that would turn and drive pulleys that they had mounted on this thing, this platform, which is just up there, and they would use that to bring ore up out of the mine shafts. So you'll find a lot of this kind of stuff along the way. Don't fall into this. The fences are always in disrepair because it is the UP. And times are tough up there. Weather is tough. But this is the kind of thing you run into. You'll come to trenches like this. This one's about 6 feet deep. They hack these out with pickaxes by hand in a straight line, looking for a vein of silver or a vein of iron. That was the technology that they had to go ahead and find all this stuff. Very, very tough work. Then down at the bottom, before you turn and go back, it's only about a half a mile. This whole trail is only about a mile long. You'll find signs like this all along the way. The Nonsuch Road was cleared in 1846 by Indian natives. Then it became known as that. You'll find these kinds of statements. Got oxen through on the road. Discharged 2 Irishmen. They don't tell us why. Found a fine piece of silver. And then this also had, the road was still full of rocks and chuck holes. The travelers were advised to lash themselves to their rig so they wouldn't be thrown out. Fortunately, that road is no longer in use. But so this is a wonderful trail. Keep your dog on a leash because there are bears in the area. And if, the bears usually will not bother you, but your dog might smell it and think it's another dog and take off after it. So if you're going to have a pet out there, keep your dog on a leash. So you've done a lot of exercise here. Another great place in this area is the Contica. This is in White Pine. White Pine was a town that was built for the White Pine mine because they couldn't get anybody to come and work there because the conditions were so bad. So the mining company built the entire town, built big boulevard streets, paid for housing. They built a shopping mall and filled it with stores. They built a hospital, they built a school. Finally, they could get the people who would come and live because the conditions are harsh up here. That's all gone now. Even the shopping mall is completely empty. I think there was a political party had an office in there. But behind the mall is the Contica. Great food. They have showers there if you're out snowmobiling. They have saunas. They have a 3-lane bowling alley in case you feel like bowling while you're up there. This is the inside. What you want to do is you want to have dinner or lunch, and you want to get by these windows over here, because at the end of the lunch or dinner hour, you'll hear a door open, and coming out from here, you'll see a cook with a big stainless steel pot, and he'll run out to about here, and he'll dump it, and then he'll turn and he'll go lickety-split back. He does not go slowly because this comes over the hill almost immediately. This is Scruffy. There are 5 of these that live there now. These are wild bears. And this picture was taken through that glass. And they do this every day. And at night, if it's dark, they'll turn the lights out there. So last time I was up there, I checked with them and they said they have 5 now, 2 adults and 3 cubs. That's about a year. So this is a great free show. And this is a good place to relax after going on the Union Mine Trail. Now, We got one place to go. I'm going to talk about the central upper peninsula, but I do have a tradition that I like to do. This is May, what's the date, 17th? No,
Yes.
17th? Anybody got a birthday today? Anybody?
Our children.
They're not here. Anybody have a birthday in May? Two of you in May. Who's closest to the 17th? You are? All right. Well, I'm going to give you a copy of my book, Trails and Treasures, for a birthday present. These are easy walking trails. And in these books, if you look in these books, on the inside, you'll find a map that has numbers all over it. Those are the page numbers that tell you where all the trips are. So it's kind of easy to use. So this is our last go, the Central Upper Peninsula. We'll just look at a few places here. That dot right there, that is Grand Island. And so at this point, from here to here, the Upper Peninsula is only 45 miles wide. So you can take it a day trip up to, of course, Picture Rocks. And if you've been, that's what it goes on like this for several miles, and the big tour ship actually goes into that archway. It's well worth the tour. I don't know what the prices are now, but it's a lot of fun, and they've got great pictures. Or you can take a kayak out there if you're stout of heart. But remember, the weather can change quickly on Lake Superior. So I would take the big boat. So then there's a lot of other stuff to see. And we'll start with Fayette. Everybody's heard of Fayette. This is the old lumber iron camp, and they have refurbished it, and you can go through it, and they have great tours. This is down along Lake Michigan, down where I showed you where Namel was. This is only about 25 miles from there. This is on the Garden Peninsula. Kitch-Itty-Kippy, the big spring. This is the largest spring in Michigan. It's fresh water. 10,000 gallons gush in from the bottom every minute. And you can take this raft out by yourself or with other people, and you can look down, the water's so clear, 40 feet down, you can see these giant trout that live down there. You can't fish for them, but you can see them. This was discovered way, way back, and there was a legend that these waters were poisonous. Some people said it was poisonous because no amphibians live in this, no frogs, no turtles live in this spring, and I don't know why. This is one of the things. And some people say that it used to, the water pressure used to be much higher at certain times of the year. The water coming up would actually break the surface and do a spout. But it's beautiful. Earlier in the year you go, later in the year is much better because in the summertime you'll have a long wait to get out on the raft. But you can go in the winter if you want to, because this never freezes. I think 2 years ago during the polar vortex, was it iced over a little bit, but it's never frozen in my lifetime. Then there's Piers Gorge. This is another place to get out and stretch your legs. This is west of here, and Piers Gorge is just a river. You got about a 3/4 mile walk. It's the Menominee River, and there are several different cataracts along this river. Right now, it's probably in about Category 4 or Category 5 because of the snow melt. Very rough. You got a nice path. So the river comes down here, and then it hits 3 of these that go down. And this pathway that you're on was created thousands of years ago by Native Americans, because they would come paddling down on their way to Menominee, and they would get out here and portage around these cataracts because they were just too dangerous. So you're getting a little bit of history on Piers Gorge, and you can go here all year long too. And you can take the dogs, but it's pet friendly, but again, keep it on a leash. And then finally, Stonington Point. Stonington Point is just a little ways from Rapid River, and all you'll see is a sign that says Stonington 17 miles. You drive down there, 16 miles is paved, and you come to the car park where you can park. You can either walk the trail the last mile, or you can drive your car down and you'll come to this. This is an abandoned lighthouse, which is open. You can go up in it, and there's great picnic tables around and barbecue things around. Very beautiful place. But if you go the last 2 weeks of August or the first 2 weeks of September, and you get there on the right day, all of these trees and bushes and lighthouse will look like this. These are monarch butterflies. This is one of 2 places in Michigan where monarch butterflies gather in the tens of thousands on their way to the mountains of Mexico where they spend the winter. And they don't stop here so much on the way coming back for some reason, but this is massive numbers of them, tens of thousands, like I say, and you can't tell. You go and they're there. or they're not. And you leave and you go back the next day and either they're there or they're not. The day before this picture was taken, I was there talking to the DNR and she was counting the number of butterflies. I said, how many you got? She said, 8. I said, have they been here yet? She said, oh yeah, they were here yesterday. And there'll be more. And so you just have to take your best chances, but that's how they gather. It's really a beautiful sight to see. And then you've got dark skies. So this is, dark skies can be hard to get to down here. And dark skies are hard to find up in the UP. But if you go to NEMA and go to the NEMA Marsh Trail, it's only 3/4 of a mile long. And that's what the sky looks like. There's a big viewing platform out there, terrific for seeing the northern lights or any other kind of stargazing you want to do. Speaking of NEMA, so where we've just been, we've been here, we've been down this peninsula, we've been over here to Pierce Gorge. And so I always tell people, go to NEMA and stay there. You can't ever get a room in Munising if you want to go to the Pictured Rocks. But NEMA has an old inn. This is old NEMA here. So this used to be a lumber town. It was built by a lumber company. They were vertically integrated. They had their own forest up north. They had their lumbermen. They had a railroad track that came down here. This is their sawmill out here. Right here's where the sawmill was. That was a gigantic silo which fell down a couple of years ago. It was a burner. They didn't just bulldoze their sawdust in Lake Michigan like somebody did. They had this thing running 24/7. They burned the sawdust. That's why the smoke. And so this whole thing was built by the lumber company to take care of their workers. Of course, that doesn't function anymore. There's not much left of NEMA. I used to live there, 55 people. Now I left, so there's only 54, but no, Bobby died, so there's 53. You can't buy much in NEMA. This is the NEMA Inn, originally built in 1908. It's very cool. One of the best cooks in this part of the Upper Peninsula works there. And they have great food, very friendly place, nice bar. All the rooms are upstairs. Some of them have shared bathrooms, some of them have private bathrooms, and it's haunted 15 ways to Sunday. I don't get haunts. I never get them. I've stayed in lots of haunted places, but everybody knows about this one. They know who the ghost is. She was a school teacher who was having an affair with one of the fellas who worked at the lumber company. And when they would have their afternoon delight time, they would go to the inn and go up to one of the rooms, room 16, as a matter of fact. And that's where, and sometimes 17. So if people go just to stay in those rooms. Like I say, I've never had any experience, but almost everybody who works there will tell you stories about the ghost. And then there's the general store, which is over here. And the general store was where the people used to go and spend their paycheck. It had everything they needed, food, drugs, just all manner of sundries. They have this, it's been turned into a museum now. They also have musical events in there, and you can go in and see what used to be there. Some of the stuff you could not buy. It'd be illegal to even manufacture it anymore. And upstairs is a little bit of a museum, and they have a machine up there from a local mental hospital that was used to give people microwave shock treatment, if you can imagine. And it's still there, and the instruction book is there to tell the physicians how to use it. So a lot of strange artifacts in the general store. And there's a story about something that happened around Mother's Day back in the day. A guy was there and he was getting ready to leave and get on the boat to head back to Chicago. He'd been up there working with the lumber company. He goes into the general store looking for something, looking around. He sees this statue of a rat. And he's just looking at it. The proprietor comes over and he says, "Oh, I see you notice this beautiful sculpture." And the guy says, "Well, I don't know if I call it beautiful or not." And the guy says, "Oh, but everyone who would see this in your home would comment on it." And the guy says, "Well, everything in here has a price. Why doesn't this have a price?" And the store owner said, "Well, this doesn't have a price because there are 2 prices. See, if you just want the statue, it's $5. But if you want to know the history and the mystery behind this statue, that's another $50. And the guy said, "Wow, $55 is a lot of money, but Mother's Day is coming up on us. I got to get her something nice." And so he says, "Just give me the statue. Don't even wrap it. I got to get to my boat." So he takes off and he's going down the street. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you're somewhere and all of a sudden you get the feeling somebody's watching you. You look around, you feel that. Well, he started feeling it. He looked around, looked back, and sure enough, there was a rat following him and his statue down the road. He didn't pay any attention. He kept going. He didn't have far to go. And the feeling got stronger. He looked back, and now there were dozens of rats back there. So he starts walking a little faster. Now the feeling's almost overwhelming. He looks back because he can hear And there's hundreds of rats following him. So he takes off and runs down to the dock and runs out onto the dock to the end, takes the statue and throws it out into Lake Michigan as far as he can go. And all these rats come running down over his feet, dive into the water, swim up and dive down, trying to get to that statue, and they all drown. And he's safe. He knew he had a close call, but he's okay. And then it comes to him. He turns around and hurries back, goes back into the general store, looking around, and the proprietor sees him. He said, "Oh, you come back to get the history and the mystery of that statue." He said, "No, I don't care anything about that." He said, "I need another statue." And the guy says, "What do you need?" He said, "You have one of a politician." Come on now, it's funnier than that. So that's our program for tonight. Like I said, there's a lot more on the website. Go to any of these places, go to the website, you can find a map there, click on any region of Michigan, you can find all the information I have there. I want to thank you guys very much for coming out. And I'll take any questions.
When you get to your website, will you have like places to stay mentioned on there?
Yeah, if you go to the section that's called Getaways or 3-day Getaways, I mentioned places to stay, and in the book 3-day Getaways, every chapter tells you where I would recommend you, where I would have stayed if I was there, every one of these areas. So yes. Good places to eat too, especially if they stay in business. That's the hard thing with doing restaurants, you know, because they change cooks before they go out of business, and you just don't know what you're going to get. So. Thank you.
I just want to tell you, great job. That was wonderful.
So this is it's only 5 bucks. Coming out a month, so it's got 3 stars. These are teaching books for young kids. Where we teach you math, vocabulary, creative, wood safety. How to make it for
I know, yeah, Bill tomorrow.
Yeah.
And most of these books have that
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
And all, each book will be about 30 Southern Michigan, 30 Northern, and 30 UP.
What am I?